Welcome to the Downtown, brought to you by Arlington Citizen Media. I'm Daryl Smith Jr., and to my left is...
Hi, I'm Rody John, and across from me is...
Amy.
In today's show, we talk to Conan Saunders of mycomicshop.com, one of the largest online comic retailers in the country that is headquartered right here in Arlington, Texas.
And we have a conversation with Luke and Laura Brewer of Union Worx Co-working Space.
We make yet another stop on the Tournament of Toppings to Mama's Pizza.
And we talk about going out to Arlington's coolest bi-monthly outdoor concert series, Treehouse. We are here with Conan Saunders from mycomicshop.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, Conan.
Hi, I'm very glad to be here.
So I guess, first and foremost, what is mycomicshop.com? What do y'all do?
Yeah, we're a comic book store online, and we started out in Arlington in the 70s. I was born in 1980, so this predates me. It's a family business started by my parents, and so we were Lone Star Comics based in Arlington, and then we gradually grew and had 8 stores through the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we had those stores, as I was growing up and then going to high school. And so I graduated high school in 99, and that was around the time the internet was coming on. And so our website was My Comic Shop, and then that grew kind of alongside the stores, and then eventually got a lot bigger than just the brick and mortar locations. And so eventually we kind of shifted our focus. We sold the stores, and they're still operating Wild West in Arlington and some other companies around the Metroplex. But we just have kind of one big office and warehouse there in Arlington now, and we sell comics to people all over the world out of it.
Now, what is the future now of comic books? Are we just in a digital world, or are we people still buying actual physical comic books?
Yeah, so that was a big concern for the comics industry for quite a while. Comixology is the really big digital comics platform. There have been a few others, and people were concerned that kind of digital was the future, and it was going to be the death of printed comics. But actually, enough time has passed now. People aren't too concerned about that. Instead, they kind of view it as like Comixology and digital. It's kind of a gateway for people that aren't already into comics. Whereas, like in previous decades, you had comics at 7-Eleven or the grocery store, kind of the corner shop spinner rack. That's not around so much anymore. So for people that aren't already in the habit of going down to their comic store, if they can just hop on their iPad and get a comic, from a movie they just saw, that's a very kind of low barrier to entry to try them out. And then some of those people, spill over and get into to printed comics. And, what's actually happened is digital comics they did grow a lot, but they've kind of leveled off. They've kind of hit kind of their equilibrium. So right now it looks like digital just exists as a nice complement to printed comics rather than a threat.
Interesting.
So how has the blockbuster success of the Marvel comic franchise affected your business? Have you seen an increase in that?
It's hard to say kind of directly. I think it absolutely has had a great impact in terms of awareness and acceptance of comics. They're not kind of a niche or kind of looked down on maybe like they were in the past. Definitely for like key first appearances, anytime that there's a new movie announcement or TV announcement, certain comics featuring whatever was just announced, kind of shoot up in value, and that movement that kind of helps fuel speculators and people wanting to collect because maybe something's going to increase in value in the future. So it's definitely been a good thing. I wish that the publishers, particularly Marvel and DC, I wish that they did an even better job of kind of directly marketing to and directly capitalizing on the people that are watching the movies and kind of tying in more closely with the comics and helping to pull, those movie people over to the comic side. They do it a little bit. Sometimes there'll be, comic tie-ins published around the same time as the movies, but it's actually kind of surprising how frequently there will be a really big, really successful movie, and then as a comic store owner, there's maybe not any. There's obviously always kind of older back issues you can point people to, but there's often not a new release comic that's comic or graphic novel that you can just say, oh, hey, you liked this particular movie, here's a great comic for you to buy. That kind of feels like a missed opportunity sometimes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What is the coolest book you've ever personally held in your hands?
Or graphic novel?
Well, probably tough to beat is just one of the biggest, highest value ones. We have an Action Comics #1 first appearance of Superman, and we've only ever had one copy of it. And I mean that's it goes back to the late 30s, and Action Comics 1 along with Detective Comics 27, first appearance of Batman. Those are the two kind of big giants of the comic book world.
Now, what is it you do at My Comics?
So I kind of do multiple things. We're a family business, but we're a lot bigger than the family now. We've got a little over 100 employees total. My role, kind of like starting all the way back, like I said, when I was in high school, I was kind of the initial primary programmer and builder for our website. And so for most of my time with the company, that's been the majority of what I do is as lead developer. We have other developers that work with me now, but just doing the programming for not just the public part of the website that everybody sees, but back-end things, processing orders, getting them all shipped out, getting purchasing new inventory, all that kind of stuff. And then aside from the programming, I'm also involved with different things like some of our buying and some of our consignment service. I'll help just with certain projects. I'm actually just in a couple of weeks, my dad and I are going out to California on a comic buying trip. We do these kind of a couple times a year generally. So we'll be flying into the Los Angeles area, and then there's a big potential comic buy, like a comic dealer who has a lot of inventory he wants to kind of sell out to us. So we're going to check out all that stuff, and then we've also got 5 or 6 other kind of smaller comic collections lined up in the area that we'll also be seeing and possibly buying. So, hopefully, if we're successful, we're going to end up filling up a couple of U-Haul box trucks with comics, and then just driving them back from LA to Arlington. It's a pretty interesting and fun business.
What a fun drive that made that.
I've done that drive.
Yeah.
I still live here because I didn't want to have to drive back.
She drove it once and then was like, never mind.
I just live here now.
Last question I have for you.
I wouldn't want to do it frequently, but I love those kind of Western, kind of barren, long, drives. I really like those kind of drives.
Seeing the desert and whatnot.
It's beautiful at nighttime.
Last question, Conan, and this might be a hard one to answer, but who is your favorite superhero? You can give more than one. It's fine. I have a lot too, so it's hard for me to answer it anyway.
Well, I think one kind of easy one is Batman, and I liked the version of Batman that isn't all. And I'm actually hopeful that they're going to get into this more with the new Batman movie that's been announced with Robert Pattinson. But the detective version of Batman, the one who Batman's obviously a great fighter and kind of always prepared, but also the world's greatest detective.
Yeah, he's also Sherlock Holmes.
Stealthy, and he has kind of multiple skills to draw on. I think the Arkham Asylum games, video games, did a good job of kind of reflecting that side of him, and I'm hoping we see more of that in the movies.
If you had a superpower, what would it be?
I think it'd be tough to top just straight old flight.
Could save a lot, like flying. You could fly to get those comics instead of drive.
Yeah, fly, save a lot of gas, have a good time, and not get into trouble with invisibility. The other common one.
All right. Well, where can people find your website, or do you have social medias that you want to promote?
So the website is mycomicshop.com, and then you can also find us on social media, pretty much just with that same, with My Comic Shop, on Facebook and Twitter. I think our Facebook's pretty cool. We post some frequently a lot of funny comic panels. So good place to get some interesting comic material.
Well, cool. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll probably have you back on again. We like people coming back. We're shooting for a 5 stars club.
As long as there's a jacket, then I'm definitely in.
It's a denim jacket, but yes.
Thank you so much. It
With
was so nice
a
talking to you.
bedazzled number 5 on the back.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, perfect.
Bedazzled by Daryl.
Yeah.
All right, thanks,
well, I'm
Conan.
looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Have fun, buddy.
All right. Thank you all.
We are with Lauren and Luke Brewer from Union Worx. How are y'all today?
We're great.
We're good. So, what's the story behind Union Worx?
How did it come up together? Like, what was...
It's such a simple story,
Yes.
you guys. No, it's a pretty convoluted story, really. So Luke and I got married in 2014.
That's right.
Yeah, sometimes I
Got
get
it.
confused. 2014, and my background was hospitality and event planning, and my world was in North Dallas, and it was heavy nights, heavy weekends, and Luke already owned a home in Arlington, and it just made sense for me to move into that home when we got married, so I did, and very quickly realized nights and weekends while being married and like wanting to actually spend time with your husband was kind of counterintuitive. It was really hard, and also I was just kind of at a point in my career where I had kind of, I guess, plateaued, and I was just burnout.
Right.
Which happens in the hospitality industry, and I think it's pretty typical. But I was just looking for something new to do. But all of my background, all of my experience was, in event planning and marketing and things like that. So I just kind of started looking for something new, looking for a different type of career, something that was more, regular 9 to 5, and Luke is an IT background, and he'd be home at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. I'm like, man, what a great life. That had not been my life at all. So he kind of heard about Corworking and was like, man, you would be great at like managing a co-working spot. You have all the skills, and that hospitality background would really help, and you'd be great at that. And I just thought, okay, what is co-working?
Right.
What does he mean? So I started doing some research of my own, and we started going to all the local ones, mainly in Dallas at that time, and just trying to like figure that out, see if that was even something I was interested in. And it just sounded so cool. It sounded different.
Yeah,
it sounded awesome. And I was like, yes, this is where I want to be. So I started interviewing at all the big ones in Dallas, and I would get to like the 3rd interview and just not get hired, right? Because either, I don't have peeps in Dallas to bring with me. I didn't have connections out in Dallas. And so that made sense.